Can we give the band a thank you? Thank you guys for leading us. Thanks, man. Well, hello everybody. Good morning. It's good to see you. My name's Tony. If we haven't met, that's a shame. I really would like to meet you. I am learning names bit by bit. Thank you to the handful of people who have been very gracious with me. They come up, they're like, I know you're trying to learn names. I don't expect you to know my name. I appreciate that. I would like to meet you. So come say hi after service. If you have a Bible, you can go ahead, pull it out. We're going to be reading the Bible today. And if you have a smartphone, you prefer to follow along there, you can do that. We have the Church Center app you can follow along in. We will be in the book of 1 John, chapter 2, verses 15 through 17. And if you're new to the Bible or new to church and this whole deal, you might be wondering, 1 John, how many Johns are there? It is confusing because there's 4 of them, but only 3 of them have numbers. So let me run you through it. Remember, this is our broken out Bible. The Bible's not one book. It's a collection of different kinds of documents. Here they are. This is the Old Testament on top. This is the New Testament. Now, the New Testament starts with 4 books called the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. John, that book, John, with no numbers in the title, is the story of Jesus' life, ministry, teachings, death, resurrection through John's lens. Then, later on in the New Testament, we get 3 letters, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. And we're not totally sure who wrote these, but we think it's the same John who wrote the Gospel. It uses a lot of very similar language. So most people think it's the same John who wrote the Gospel, also wrote 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Today we'll be in 1 John chapter 2, verses 15 through 17. And, let's just read it, and then we'll dive in. Is everybody there? Say, got it. Got it. Everyone's got it. Great. It says this: do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, comes not from the Father, but from the world. The world and its desires pass away, but whoever does the will of God lives forever. Now, this passage is responsible for, you might have heard a phrase, I wonder if you've heard this. I grew up hearing this, that we should be as Christians in the world but not of the world. Anybody heard that? We should be in the world but not of the world. It's cute, it's nice, it's easy to remember. It's not in the Bible, but this is the passage that sort of led to that idea, and that's the idea we're going to explore a bit today. What does it mean for us to be in the world but not of the world? Because in my life, this little catchphrase actually led me to some extremes that I think probably need to be avoided and I think might be at odds with the heart of Jesus. Let me tell you what I mean. So I grew up in the church. I've always been a Christian as long as I can remember. I've sort of worn that label with some degree of pride, actually. And for a long time, I would, say I was on a bus or a plane, somewhere where there's the general public, a bunch of non-Christians or non-believers. This phrase had led to a subtle attitude of, I would never say this out loud, I don't think, but I definitely felt it, of just I'm just kind of better than those people. Like, those poor non-Christians, they just don't get it. If they just thought about it a bit, what a shame, they're going to hell. That must really suck for them. So I'm glad I got my ticket to heaven. It was that sort of dismissive attitude that I had. I'm not one of them. I'm different. I'm separate because I'm not part of the world. And I get it. There is some tension there. That the trouble is with how we're defining the word world, right? I took the world to mean non-Christians and non-believers, and as a result, my faith emphasized my separation from people, my separation from everybody out in the world, how I'm different, as opposed to emphasizing the love I should have for people and building connections with people. So this is a question that I think is worth us exploring and asking ourselves is, does your faith, does your relationship with God, does it emphasize your separation from everybody else on the planet? Or does it emphasize connection with everybody else on the planet? The extreme of this is like what we see in the Amish community. My parents were just here, so we went to Amish country, and I guess we kind of treated it like a zoo. Like, there's a buggy, and there's, take a look at that one. But what's going on in the Amish community is they are taking this to the extreme of really trying to communicate we are set apart, different, separate from the rest of the world. We dress differently. We don't use technology. Our way of life is different. And there's I'm sure there's plenty of great Amish people. I don't know many myself. But this attitude, if it's taken too far, can lead to, like I had for a long time, this holier than thou attitude. I've got it figured out. I've got the answers. I'm glad I'm in the in club. It stinks to be in the out club. And how many of you love speaking to somebody who has a holier than thou attitude? You love hanging out with them and getting to know them? I sure don't. And so how do we square this with Jesus' message? Here's the tension. Here in 1 John, John says, do not love the world or anything in the world. But then back in the book of John, very famous verse, John 3:16, anybody know it? For God so... Oh, what's going on there? So in 1 John, he's telling us don't love the world, but back in John, he's telling us that God radically loves the world and in fact stopped at nothing to communicate his love for the world and everyone in it. So how do we square this tension? Because John can't be telling us to not love people. I mean, loving people is right at the top of the list of what's important for Jesus. If you read his teachings, you will see that over and over again, loving people is right up there. At one point, Jesus was asked, hey, what's the greatest commandment? You know, could you just sum it up for us? Just give us one. Like, what's the TLDR? What's the short version? And Jesus said, very quickly, love God with everything you got and love people. Love people as much as you love yourself. So for Jesus, loving people is central. So John here in 1 John has to be talking about something else when he says, do not love the world. He's not saying dismiss the non-believers. No, we should pursue and build bridges and build connections and love people radically. What's he talking about? Well, he goes on in the next verse to expand a little bit on what he means by the world and everything in the world. And he lists three things. He says, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. So we're going to unpack each of those bit by bit. Let's start with the lust of the flesh. Sounds like a good name for a metal band, doesn't it? The lust of the flesh. I could see that. When we hear this phrase, the lust of the flesh, I think we pretty quickly go to the sexual arena. That's most often what we associate the word lust with and flesh. It's to do with bodies and it's to do with sex and strong desires. And that's true, but the way John's using it actually, it touches on more than just sexual urges and sexual desires. The lust of the flesh is any of those very strong impulses that we experience as biological creatures that we let run the show. So it could be sex, it could be strong sexual urges or where you're looking with your eyes. It could also be food, you know, that there is, I don't know, you could just have a buffet is a perfect example of this. Like you can be satisfied and still there's something in you that's like, go back for more, get some more. You paid for it already, it's just sitting there, go get it. That's the lust of the flesh, that feeling of, I don't need it, but man, do I want it. I just want to shovel it down my gullet. And it might not be food for you, it might not be. It might be acquiring stuff. Maybe it's possessions. There's this craving for stuff. I just want to shop and buy and acquire and get more things. That is all lust of the flesh. Now, before we go any further, we just need to take a little detour. I want to explain a pitfall that we're going to try to avoid this morning, okay? It's called Gnosticism. Has anybody heard that word before? Gnosticism? Yes, great. Okay, a few of us. Here's the deal with Gnosticism, because again, it's a heresy. It's at odds with Christianity, and it's somewhere we don't want to end up. But I think we can often have Gnostic leanings if we don't pay attention to it. Here's the deal with the Gnostics. They basically believed that the physical world, material stuff, matter, the body, was bad, evil, dirty, unclean, less than a lower plane of existence. But then the spiritual side of life, that's what was really good and true and should be pursued. And there's a nugget, I get it, there is a little nugget of wisdom or something there. Like I do have the sense that my character is what is really important. What kind of person am I becoming? But we are embodied creatures, like it or not. And so your character is lived out and expressed in physical matter through your body. That's how your character is expressed. And this view of the body and physical matter as being unclean or less than is totally at odds with the good news of the gospel. Because Christianity is incarnational, meaning God took on flesh. He incarnated. He wore skin, He had a body like you and me. The creator of all of this, entered into physical reality and then lived the human experience that we're all having. And he had the truly human experience of learning to walk and stubbing your toe and getting tired and getting sweaty and going to the bathroom. I know we don't think about that, Jesus going to the bathroom, but he did. This is Christianity 101, is that he was truly, truly human in every way that we are. And in God doing that, entering into physical creation, what he did was affirm the goodness of physical creation. There's some weird tendency we can have to think about, well, this world's just all sort of going to hell in a handbasket. Can't wait till God makes a new one. That's like, God made this, all of this. God made your body, and it's all a gift. The fact that you're here, the fact that the lights are on, the fact that you're breathing and aware at all is a gift. You have been given a great, great gift. And so, it is good to be human. It is good to be here. And it's good to experience the gifts of embodied existence. When you see a beautiful sunset, enjoy it, soak it in. It's God's gift to you. When you eat a delicious meal, he gave you taste buds for a reason. Enjoy it. When you have great sex, enjoy it. That's God's gift for you if it's with your spouse. That's God's gift to you. There are very physical embodied joys that are God's gift to us, and we don't, like the Gnostics, we don't want to throw all of that out and say, no, just deny the body, deny it, just avoid pleasure at all costs. That's not it. Our God invented pleasure, right? But the other extreme is we don't want to become hedonists that are just living by our impulses, living out of the lust of the flesh and following whatever's dragging us around to make us feel good. There's a middle way where we submit it all to Christ, we enjoy the gifts he's given us, but we're not being pulled around by them either. Does that make sense? So I want you to hear this as well on the sexuality piece, because we're talking here about the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes. I want you to hear that your sexuality is a gift. And I know that in a room like this, there has to be a bunch of us who, like me, for a long, long time, I viewed my sexuality as being like a burden, like a problem God gave me to manage, right? Because I've had to work hard for a long time to wrangle this thing under control, to get it under control and not be mastered by it, not be dragged around by it. And I want you to hear that it is a gift for you when it's in its proper place. I even just had sort of a fresh paradigm shift when we had our son Ollie last year, because here I was seeing that when it's all in its proper place, when sex is happening within the context of a committed, loving marriage, and it's coming from a place of union and intimacy and love, it leads to this miracle of life. And it's so, so good. The way God designed it is so good. But we get confused when we are not submitting our sexuality to Christ. So if you are, for example, I don't know, if you're sexually involved with somebody that you're not married to, or you're scrolling through Tinder and hooking up, or you're going places online that you know you shouldn't, you have to know that that's not God's best for you. It's like he wants to take you to a day at the ocean, but you're content to sit in the mud and build mud pies. You're settling for something way less than what he designed you for. We need to submit our sexuality to Christ, and God's best is marriage. One man, one woman, one lifetime commitment. Now, God isn't a killjoy. He doesn't make rules to stifle our joy. It's for our best. He actually wants the best for you. That's what love is. He wants your good. And so he doesn't kill joy. He invented joy. He is the God of joy. Now, I know the lust of the flesh it's not just sexual. And for some of us, it's other stuff as well. Like I noticed in my life recently that I actually struggle with food more than I thought. You wouldn't guess it from looking at me. I get it, because I've been really skinny my whole life, and I've had a very fast metabolism. I've been able to shove whatever I want down my throat and not gain any weight. That's changing now that I'm over 30. I'm starting to notice. But I wouldn't have said that I have a problem with food, or that I am mastered by food. But Melissa is on a bit of a health kick, and she's encouraging me to be as well. You know how that goes. And she's requesting that I do less fast food. And I wouldn't have said I had a problem until I actually tried to stop. And I realized, oh man, I've actually got something of a habit of swinging through and picking up some cheeseburgers from the dollar menu or a nice cold Coke or something. And I found it, you wouldn't believe the mental gymnastics I've done. This is how you know you have a problem or you're an addict, is like you start to justify stuff. The other day, I was like trying to convince myself that a burrito from Taco Bell is not that different than a wrap, and a wrap is healthy. Right? It's wrapped. It's wrapped in a tortilla. Yeah, I think I have a problem. But it's not, I don't want you to mishear me. I'm not saying fast food is evil or eating ice cream is a sin. It's not that. It's not that. It's that I have been letting the lust of my flesh steer the ship. I've been letting it drive. If there's an impulse, hey, you deserve a Big Mac. Hey, Coke sounds good. I've just been along for the ride with that. And that's really not good, just as in the sense of self-control and the spiritual discipline. So I'm not saying fast food's off limits, but Scripture has this to say in 1 Corinthians 6, that everything's permissible, but that we should not be mastered by anything. As Christians, we should not be mastered by anything other than Christ. That's what it all is submitted to. So what is it in your life? Where does the lust of the flesh pop up in your life? These strong urges that you yield to. The lust of the eyes, that one is a little more obvious for us. I remember a few years ago, I was in New Jersey with a mate of mine going to a video game tournament or something, and we had a spare night, and we decided we were going to go into New York City and Times Square and, see the nightlife, see what New York City is all about. So we got in a cab, and we were chatting to the driver on the way there, asking him. We figured he knows the best things to do in New York City. We'll ask him. And he suggested what he considered to be the best strip clubs in New York City, thinking that would be a good night for these two young lads. And I told him that, we're engaged and that would not be honoring to our girls and that wasn't going to happen. His response was, there's nothing wrong with looking, it's just wrong to touch. There's nothing wrong with just window shopping. In other words, there's nothing wrong with the lust of the eyes, don't worry about that. It's just the lust of the flesh is what you really want to watch out for, but the lust of the eyes is fine. Jesus says otherwise. In Matthew 5:28, he says, "You've heard that it was said, 'Do not commit adultery,' but I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman to lust after her has already committed adultery with her in his heart." See, Jesus is concerned with our hearts. And looking is never just looking. I know you can kind of think, it's just a glance, or it doesn't matter, it's not going to change things. It's never just looking. It's never just looking, because where you look directs your attention, and where you direct your attention directs your heart. It will shape you. It will change the way you view sexuality. It will change the way you view the opposite sex. Because lust, the kind of lust John is talking about here, and the kind of lust that we're called to avoid, is me first. So what I don't want you to hear is sexual desires are bad. That's not it. Sexual desires are good. God gave you those for a reason. They just need to be directed appropriately. And lust is me. It's all about my pleasure, what I want, me first. And that's not God's design for sexuality. It's supposed to be a way that you serve your spouse. That's how godly sexuality is supposed to work. So let me ask, what are you looking at? Where are you directing your eyes? Are you directing your eyes, or are your eyes directing you? What about, this is the question everyone's hoping I won't ask, what about online? Where are you going online? How often are you opening incognito tabs? How would you feel if we could all see your search history? I wouldn't like it. It matters where you're going online. Is it true? Is it good? Is it beautiful? Is it wholesome? Or is it something that you'd want to keep in the dark? And I get it. Believe me, I get it. That I know in a room like this, there are people in here who feel completely trapped and bound up in addiction to porn. Going places online that you shouldn't. Fooling around in ways that you shouldn't. I get it. Sexual sin and addiction has this way of gripping you tightly and feeling like you'll never be free. I want you to hear me on this. Freedom is possible. Grace is available for you. No matter how many times you've messed up, I know you're thinking, oh boy, he doesn't know what I did. He would not know what sort of weird stuff I think about. Believe me, to God, He loves you anyway. There is grace enough for every failure, every shortcoming. There is always grace for you. So what are we doing online? Where are we directing our eyes? And maybe it's not sexual. Maybe there's other stuff in your feed that is feeding the lust of the eyes. So let me ask, what's coming across your feed? What kind of content have you curated? Who are you subscribed to? Who are you following? And then what kind of fruit is it producing in you? Is it making you the kind of person that you really want to be? Is it making you the kind of person that God has designed you to be? What's it causing you to think about a lot of the time? The pride of life is this need that we feel to impress other people, the need to make things about us and be puffed up and stand taller than other people, to be recognized, to be admired. That's the pride of life. And there is this endless rat race that we are tempted to join. It starts young, starts in school and then college, and then you got to go to the workforce and you got to make money and you got to get a nice house and then maybe get a bigger house and get a nice car and be somebody. You've got to make yourself into something. And there is I think we have an even harder time with it here in 2022 because of social media and the asymmetry that's going on in social media. Like, you're only seeing everybody else's highlights. You're not seeing their humdrum days. Why would they post that? No, you're going to see the highlights, the times they went on a killer vacation or how happy their family seems to be all the time. You see the best parts of everybody else's life, and you look at your life with its ups and its downs, and sometimes more downs than ups, and you think, what's wrong with me? Why does everybody else seem to be so happy? It's the pride of life, and I wonder if you know somebody like this. This is another way that the pride of life sneaks in, is in conversations. Somebody who is in the grips of the pride of life is that person who's like a name dropper. Every conversation, they're letting you know what famous person they used to work with, or that thing they did, or what achievement they did back in high school, the glory days. And there's some desperate need for validation that's coming through in the conversation, or a one-upper, somebody who, anytime you tell a story, they've got a better, bigger, harder story to tell. You could tell them you broke your leg last week skiing, and they'd say, that's nothing. I broke 4 legs last year when I was skiing. There's always some way that they can one-up you and make it about themselves. It comes from a place of searching for a lasting identity. When you're constantly asking people for validation that way, it's because you are insecure about your identity, and you are looking to the world to provide something only your Father can provide, which is a lasting, true identity. That's what we all want. That's what we want deep down, is to know that we are seen, that we are loved, that we are accepted, that we are enough, and that is only ever going to be found in Jesus. Everything else will leave you empty. The pride of life, it creeps in to make everything about us, but here, John tells us in verse 17, the world and its desires pass away, but whoever does the will of God lives forever. The world and its desires pass away. See, there will come a day, mark my words, for every one of us, there will come a day when you have to give it all up, all of it. That fancy job title, the nice house, however much money you've banked, whatever it is that the lust of the flesh and the pride of life have pulled you into and convinced you that this is worth pursuing, you will get to the end of your life and you will not be able to take any of it with you. There will be a moment, and I really want you to feel this. I want you to imagine this. Imagine that you're on your deathbed and you know you've got an hour left. An hour, that's it. And then it's lights out. In that moment, what will matter? What will matter to you? What do you hope you've spent your life on? What do you hope you've spent your time thinking about and spent your energy and your resources on? What's going to be important to you at the end of your life? Because this life it's just a breath. It's here today and it's gone tomorrow. And here John is warning us, hey, don't fall too much in love with a world that's passing away. You can't grab it. You can't cling on to it. At some point, your hands will be pried open and you will have to let it go. And you can't take anybody with you. You can't take anything with you. It will be you and God and the question of, do I trust him? In your final moments, all of us, that will be it. No possessions, no other people. You, God, do you trust him? That's where we're headed. So I don't want to go to the grave clinging and grasping and screaming and resisting. I want to go ready. Like, I've been expecting this. Like, this is my graduation. Like, this hasn't caught me by surprise. And I want to live in such a way that in those final moments, I'm not suddenly panicked by regret of, oh, I have mislived. I have lived wrongly this whole time. We want to do the will of God. That's what John says. The one who does the will of God will live forever. We want to be in the world without being taken in by the world because it's passing away. So, don't disconnect, don't discount the world as, well, that's all just going to hell in a handbasket. Glad I got my ticket to heaven. I mean, aren't you glad God didn't do that? Like John 3:16 doesn't say, for God so disliked the world that he walked away and left it to burn down and went and built another one. That's not John 3:16. He saw the world, he loved it and everyone in it, and he did everything he possibly could to communicate that love to us. So while we're here, while the lights are on, while we're awake and we're alive and we're breathing, let's be here. Don't disconnect. We are here in this world for a reason. We are embodied for a reason. There's a kingdom that needs to be built. We've got some work to do. So let's be here. Let's be fully in it, immersed in it, engaged in it, and active in the world. And that means, if we're going to avoid the Gnosticism, enjoy whatever goodness comes your way when it comes your way, because it's from God. It's a gift from God. If you hear some good music, thank God for music. We didn't have to have music. I'm so grateful that we do, though. We didn't have to have taste buds, but he gave us taste buds. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. And at the same time, recognize that it's all a gift. It's like sand through our fingertips. It's passing away. So hold it with open hands. Be ready to let go and hold it loosely. This is how Jesus was. He ate and he laughed and he loved people deeply and he had friends. I mean, he wept when they died. This guy was invested in this life. He was fully in it, and at the same time, he held it loosely enough to lay it down and give it up when he was asked to. That's what we should strive for. The world and its desires are passing away, but whoever does the will of God lives forever. Now, what's the will of God? Well, we touched on it earlier. According to Jesus, love God, love people, all people, everywhere, the inhabitants of the world. Love them. And because these people that's the only investment that's going to be eternal and worthwhile. Like we said, the world and its desire, they're all passing away. You can't take them. But people last forever. Look around. Everybody in this room is an eternal creature. You are destined for eternity. And so, man, if we spend this life not loving people, you're not going to like heaven very much because, spoiler alert, it's chock full of people. That's kind of the thing. That's kind of God's whole thing, is he loves people. So we should too. Now, one last thing I want to leave you with is that I'm going to give you some tools this week, things you could try, depending on if it's lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, pride of life that seems like it's got you in its grip. But I don't want you to hear any of this as us scoring points, right? That doesn't happen. There is no point system in God's accounting. So it's not that we try to live better to win God's favor, or so that he will love us, or so we can be saved. That's not it. No, you are already loved. There is already grace for you. Instead, this is us learning to walk with Jesus. That's what we're invited to, is walk for a lifetime and ultimately for eternity with Jesus. And I know sometimes it looks more like limping after Jesus. I feel the same way. Sometimes he has to drag me along, and that happens too. All of this is just us learning to walk with him because that's what we've been invited to, a relationship with a living God. But none of this is going to score points with him, all right? But still, here's some things we could try this week as we learn to walk with Jesus. If the lust of the flesh is your thing, you're feeling pulled around by your biological impulses, maybe you need to fast. If food is a challenge for you, I know it's a little more of a socially acceptable sin, that gluttony thing. But if it has more power in your life than it should, and you are feeling mastered by it, then maybe fasting is a good thing to try this week. That's what that spiritual discipline is for. You abstain from food for a day, or maybe it's just dessert. You're not doing desserts anytime this week. And that's a way to practice self-control and to submit our desires to Christ. Maybe it's not a fast from food. Maybe it's a fast from technology. Again, I'm just kind of rattling through my addictions here, but I have a pretty bad relationship with my phone, find myself reaching for it all the time. If that's you, maybe like today, decide when you're going to have some deliberately unplugged, disconnected time this week, where the phone is not even in the same room as you. Or if it's If it's shopping, maybe you need to curb that. I don't know. Where does the lust of the flesh rise up in your life? And then how can you practice self-control this week? For me, you can hold me to this. Here's my commitment to you as a church. This is so pathetic. I will not go to the drive-thru this week, okay? You can ask me next Sunday, did you go? And I know that should be easy. I'm sad to say it probably will be a struggle for me. At some point this week, I promise you, I will have the thought, you could go. They're not going to ask you. Nobody's going to remember. Ask me, okay? All right. Lust of the eyes. If this is you, you feel like your eyes, you just don't have control of them. They just go where they want. You might need to curate your feed a little bit. You might need to unfollow or unsubscribe from something online. If you are feeling trapped and alone and terrified in porn addiction, you just feel totally trapped. Way more people in this room can relate to you than you probably realize. You are not as alone as you think. And these sorts of things lose their power when they are brought to light. So I would encourage you to find somebody that you trust, whether it's a close friend who can help keep you accountable, or it's somebody on our pastoral staff. Anything you share is obviously confidential. If you need someone just to talk to who will meet you with grace, without judgment, and will love you and pray for you and help you, we are available for that. You might need to install some software, some filters on your various devices. You might need to talk to a spouse about the problem that you're having, that you've been keeping in the dark. You might need to take some uncomfortable steps, but if you want freedom, know that it is available, it is possible, and that there's grace for you. Take some of those steps this week. The pride of life, if that's you, if you tend to be a chronic poster on social media, you want more followers and want the likes and the attention, and take a break. Don't post anything this week. Your followers will be fine, believe me. They'll be all right. They're going to survive 1 week. Just don't post anything. Or if you're a chronic boaster in conversation, you tend to make things about you, just watch closely in your conversations this week. And when you feel that temptation rise up to, there's a story I could tell that would swing the conversation back to me, ask a question instead. Deliberately choose to make a conversation about somebody else and not about you. In all of this, we need to be listening to the Holy Spirit's voice, and we need His strength if we're going to be able to learn to walk with Jesus. So let me pray for us, hey? Because we need His help. God, we just recognize that there are countless ways that we make mistakes and that we fall short of the example that you set. So we apologize and we ask for your forgiveness, and we thank you that it's available, that you have such tremendous grace for us. God, I lift up anybody in this room who's struggling with some kind of a sexual sin that they feel stuck in, whether it's pornography or it's an affair or it's something that they feel like is too big to be forgiven, too big to be accepted by you, and that there isn't hope. I pray that they would experience your grace, that you would speak truth to them, and that they might be able to experience freedom. God, I just want to speak against that lie that freedom's not available. That's the lie that the enemy tells us, is you're trapped in this forever. And God, we know that's not true because you offer us freedom. So I pray that you would give these people the courage to have the difficult conversations that they might need to have, to take what steps they need to take, to submit their sexuality to you. And God, in everything that we do, whether it's food, it's sex, it's conversations, there's so many ways we get it wrong. We need your help. So help us to hear your voice and to obey you when we do. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen.